thank you for joining us for a steering and policy hearing called We Hear You, A Brighter Future for Millennials. Rosa DeLauro and I are the two co-chairs for the Democratic Steering and Policy Committee. We are joined by our esteemed colleagues, and we will be joined shortly by the House Democratic leader, Nancy Pelosi. We called this hearing because the millennial generation has become the largest, most diverse, and best educated generation in America. Yet, what many of us have found across the country is that there are a lot of challenges to the bargain in America that each generation should do better than the generation that has come before them. And what we have found are these challenges really relate to core American principles: being able to start a family, being able to buy a home near where you work, and if you have a good idea, being able to turn that good idea into a business. Those are all threatened today. Some of them are the policies that we have seen from this administration and this Republican leadership. Some of them are changing economic forces, whether it's in the areas of innovation and automation and what that means to displacement or cheaper labor overseas. But whatever they are, we know that they affect you. And so what we want to do is to turn these challenges into opportunities for you as you go into the workforce or as you participate and grow in the workforce. And the best way for us to do that is to understand what those challenges are. We've put together a panel today of witnesses across the country, across the different fields and experiences that young people have, and I hope that they inform me and our colleagues as to what we can do to not only hear you, but be for you and stand up for you here in Congress. And so I'll turn it over to Rosa DeLauro, and then we will introduce our witnesses.
Thank you so much, Congressman Swalwell. Honored to co-chair this Steering and Policy Committee forum with all of you, and to welcome our colleagues here today: Congresswoman Linda Sanchez of California, Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, Michigan, Congressman Mike Thompson of California, and as my colleague, Congressman Swalwell, pointed out, we will soon be joined by our fearless leader, and that's Nancy Pelosi. But we want to just really say a thank you to the leader for organizing a critical hearing, which this is. And I also want to just start by saying the comments that our leader made on the floor of the House of Representatives yesterday. And as she pointed out, in the face of the tragedy that has befallen the House, we are all Americans, and we are united. And I think it's important for everyone here to know that, and as we carry forward with the business of the House of Representatives. I welcome our panelists here today. We're going to thank you for sharing your perspectives on the challenges that millennials face in the workforce. According to the Pew Research Center, millennials are more likely than any previous generation to be college educated, with 40% of 25 to 29-year-olds holding a bachelor's degree or more. But we also have to consider the 60% of millennials that do not have a college degree. They are a majority of millennials who are part of the working public in the United States. So that we need to look at how we provide job training, educational opportunities, training for jobs in a digital economy, so that all workers are, in fact, in a good position to get a job with fair wages. Yet while this generation is more educated, and despite the fact that millennials are working in a period of unprecedented productivity, their wages have remained stagnant when adjusted for inflation compared to the last two generations. They are also more burdened by financial hardships than previous generations, with higher levels of student loan debt, poverty, and unemployment, lower levels of personal income than the previous two generations. The fact is, despite blanket claims that this generation is lazy or entitled, they are facing real issues, serious issues. We ought to be pursuing policy solutions that put them front and center. The biggest economic challenge of our time is that too many people now are in jobs that do not pay them enough to live on. And that especially affects millennials, who make up 34% of the workforce. When we talk about policies to support the success of this generation, we need to take into account workplace policies that support working families. More than 1 million millennials are becoming mothers each year. Despite waiting longer to start having families, this generation now accounts for the vast majority of U.S. births. For the success of this generation, we must fight for paid family leave, paid sick days, paycheck fairness, and raising the minimum wage. Millennials are also questioning many of the institutions and the resources past generations have taken for granted. Pew Research found that half of millennials do not believe they will receive Social Security benefits. As they face an uncertain future in our ever-changing world, it is critical for us to understand the issues facing this generation so that we can enact public policy that improves the lives of millennials and our economy as a whole. We are all eager to hear from our panelists today and to have you share your perspectives about the most pressing issues facing millennials today. So we thank you all for being here. We will now move to your testimony. I will make a couple of introductions, as with Congressman Swalwell, and then we will open up to members for questions and back and forth with our panelists. Let me begin by introducing William Hubbard. Vice President of Government Affairs at Student Veterans of America, who will discuss the challenges millennial veterans face from student debt to GI benefits. William joined the Marine Corps at age 17, initially served with the 2nd Battalion, 24th Marines Regiment. He continues to serve with the 4th Marine Logistics Group as a drilling reservist out of Joint Base Anacostia Bowling. He received his bachelor's in international studies from American University. After graduation, spent several years serving government agencies to include the Department of Navy, Department of State, the State of Indiana Department of Revenue, in his role as a federal strategy and operations consultant. As a National Executive Committee member of Deloitte's Armed Forces Business Resource Group, Mr. Hubbard was dedicated to the achievement of veterans and led the successful proposals of 2 veteran-focused pro bono projects. William, we thank you for your service and for being here today. And I look forward to your testimony. I think we'll do all the introductions at once. I'll do Luisa Santos and then turn it back over to you, Eric. Luisa Santos, and I told Luisa, that is, my middle name is Luisa, but more importantly than that, my mother's name is Luisa. So Luisa is an entrepreneur from Miami-Dade County and the founder of Lulu's Ice Cream. Did you bring any samples here today? Anyway, especially chocolate for the leader. Luisa was born in Bogota, Colombia, and has lived in Miami since she was 8. She attended the Honors College at Miami-Dade College and then Georgetown University. Let me quote her. Strongly believes in the power of ice cream. During her senior year at Georgetown, Luisa discovered liquid nitrogen's potential to revolutionize the ice cream experience. She married her passions for sustainable business and ice cream and launched a pop-up shop on and off campus, which turned into a weekly stand at the Georgetown Farmers Market. November 2014, Lulu's won the Startup Hoya Challenge Rocket Pitch, an elevator pitch competition held as part of Georgetown Entrepreneurship Day. At the Hoya Challenge Entrepreneuropalooza, she took home first place for a commercial track business, a People's Choice Award, and Student Entrepreneur of the Year. In May 2015, Luisa decided to bring Lulu's back to her hometown, and she opened the first shop in downtown Miami. We look forward to your perspective today, Lulu, on how we can support millennial entrepreneurship and the importance of incubator and accelerator programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. And I have the pleasure of introducing Jen Mishery, Executive Director of Young Invincibles, a group that I have worked with through Future Forum, our millennial outreach group here in Washington. Jen is the Executive Director and founding staff member of Young Invincibles, also a group that was very grateful that was very helpful in signing people up for the Affordable Care Act and urging young people to do so. Legislation that's still under attack today, and we hope to hear from you about that, Jen. Jen has previously testified before Congress on financial aid and student loans, a topic I expect we'll explore today, and served as a member of the Consumer Advisory Board of the CFPB. Before Young Invincibles, Jen served as a consumer representative for the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and she hails from the state of California, where she has a bachelor's degree from UCLA and a law degree from Georgetown. Also excited to introduce Rachel Bryan, a community liaison officer for IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Rachel, I'm sorry that you are here today and not in your hometown, Oakland, California, where we are celebrating the Dubs and our NBA Finals championship. But prior to serving as a community liaison for IBEW Local 595, located in my hometown, Dublin, California, Rachel started off as a pre-apprentice and moved on to a 5-year apprentice program where she was the first pre-apprentice graduate to complete the electrical apprenticeship in Alameda County. During that program, she served on several projects throughout California, most memorably at Eden Medical Center in Castro Valley, California, where she worked with 6 other women and learned the value of having female comrades on the job. Rachel applies that lesson today as a community liaison for IBEW to ensure that women, people of color, and young workers gain access to family-supported careers in the trades. Rachel is active in and outside of her union. Today, we're looking forward to hearing about her role as a representative to the Young Workers Advisory Council of the AFL-CIO.
Before we get started with your testimony, let me introduce 2 additional members who have joined us, and that's Congressman Darren Soto and Congresswoman Nydia Velazquez.
So you want to start with Jen?
Yes,
Okay,
Jen, why
Jen,
don't you begin?
Take it away.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Thank you to Leader Pelosi, Representative DeLauro, Representative Swalwell, and the other members of the House Democratic Policy and Steering Committee for the opportunity to appear before you here today. As Representative Swalwell mentioned, my name is Gemma Shorey, and I'm the Executive Director of Young Invincibles. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan research and advocacy organization working to expand economic opportunity for young adults. The millennial generation has come of age in a dramatically different economic situation than our parents' generation. And while recent improvements in employment rates provide some relief, the effects of the Great Recession are long-lasting. Young Invincibles recently published a report on the financial health of young America, showing that millennials earn 20% less in inflation-adjusted dollars than their parents did in the late 80s. Shockingly, today's young adults who took on student debt to get a college degree earn roughly the same as workers with only a high school education in 1989 in today's dollars. And at the same time, wages for current workers with only a high school degree have plummeted sharply compared to their parents at equivalent education levels. These realities are even worse when we look at racial disparities. For every dollar earned by young whites, young African Americans earn 57 cents, and Latinx young adults earn 64 cents, respectively. These trends are the backdrop for a number of disturbing challenges facing young people in today's political debates. For example, while young adults are working hard to gain an economic foothold, we've watched their access to affordable health coverage and that of the entire nation come under siege in 2017. Opponents of the Affordable Care Act claim that young people as a whole will benefit from the provisions in the proposed American Health Care Act. This is simply not the case. In fact, young people rely heavily on critical reforms in the ACA. Since 2010, the uninsurance rate for young people has declined from 29% to 16%, with 8 million people under the age of 34 receiving coverage through the ACA, including 3.8 million through the Medicaid expansion alone. The current proposal from congressional Republicans would cut tax credits for the lowest income young people who need financial assistance the most, penalize our generation, often facing gaps in coverage, through a continuous coverage requirement, or as we're calling it, the millennial penalty, that would actually disincentivize young people from purchasing insurance. It would allow states to strip out benefits like maternity coverage, birth control coverage, mental health coverage, and substance use disorder services that young people disproportionately use. And it would repeal the Medicaid expansion that gave coverage to millions of young people and their children. Congress must instead preserve the gains made under the ACA for those 8 million young people, and then move to further expand coverage for those who are still struggling to access care. While threats to healthcare have grown tremendously since the start of this year, barriers to quality higher education continue to persist. Our generation understands the need to acquire marketable skills and knows that college-educated workers still earn higher incomes than those without a college degree. However, while the demand for post-secondary credentials has increased, so have the cost and completion challenges. Declining state spending per student has fueled borrowing, with Americans holding $1.3 trillion of student debt, and that has left nearly 70% of public college graduates with an average of $30,000 in debt. Racial disparities persist here as well. Even after grant aid, the cost of college for African American and Latinx families is the equivalent of 48 and 38% of their incomes, as opposed to 24% for white families. We also know that students face a range of unique challenges as compared to previous generations. So actually 1 in 4 post-secondary students are also parents, and 38% of students are 25 or older. This reinforces the need to make sure that colleges are high quality and that schools and financial aid programs specifically work for students who are juggling caregiving, work, and school. Congress can take action to support today's students by providing debt-free pathways to high-quality certificate programs and 2- and 4-year degrees through investments such as the Pell Grant, Federal Work Study, and the C-Campus program, which, combined with quality apprenticeships and skill-building pipelines, pave the way to the middle class and to financial security. We also know that enrolling in higher education is a high-stakes investment for young people and their families, and right now they're often left in the dark when they're trying to make decisions about where to go to school and what to study. Congress can do more to provide data to students trying to make those crucial decisions and to ensure that schools are providing students with the support they need to graduate. Finally, we need to invest more in education, but we also need to do more to support workers across sectors, particularly low-wage workers who have been hit hardest by some of the trends we've seen over the last few decades. Congress can help ensure young workers have more of a shot at financial stability by raising the minimum wage, expanding the earned income tax credit to childless workers, and guaranteeing access to paid sick and paid leave. When we think about getting this generation back on track to financial security, pushing back against the attack on health coverage, addressing the rising costs of college and barriers to completing a degree, and supporting the needs of young workers are policy choices that Congress needs to make to reopen the door to the American dream. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Will. My thanks to Leader Pelosi, Chairman DeLauro, Chairman Swalwell, and distinguished members of this body for having us. We appreciate it. And as Chairman DeLauro mentioned, our hearts and thoughts are with the congressman and, of course, those of yesterday's vicious attack. Thank you for the opportunity to present today on the topic of securing opportunity for the millennial generation. I was born in 1989, right in the heart of my generation's parameters. For those doing the math, I'm 28. Over the past 10 years, I've started a business, graduated from American University, and had the honor of meeting presidents, secretaries, members of Congress. In 2006, at the age of 17, I joined the Marine Corps and continue to serve in the reserves today. Of all those meaningful moments, my proudest was receiving an email from Joanna, wife of 36 years of Mike, a cancer patient who took a 1 in a million shot to find a bone marrow donor. He turned 4 this January by his new birthday count after successfully transplanting nearly 6 pounds of my own marrow. My story with Mike is one of science, research, and service. As a Marine, I took an oath to protect American lives. So despite some people seeing Mike as a total stranger to me, I saw him as an American I could save. I'm uncomfortable for praise for my actions. Who would not make the same choice, I wonder? When given the opportunity to help a fellow American have the chance to live and meet his twin grandchildren, who would not make the same choice? To secure opportunity for the millennial generation, knowledge of this service mentality is paramount. Today, our generation faces more than $1.4 trillion of student debt, constrained budgets that have put the GI Bill in the crosshairs, and a pervasive lack of data on a myriad of topics which plagues our ability to engender informed decision-making among college-bound students. Several years ago, the absence of data on the success of student veterans using the GI Bill led to efforts from Student Veterans of America to produce the Million Records Project and our more recent research, the National Veteran Education Success Tracker, or INVEST for short. For the first time ever, this groundbreaking research lets us see how student veterans are performing in school in near real time. Despite the persistent miss of student veterans not doing well in school, our research found that they're far outpacing their peers, pursuing rigorous high-demand degrees in STEM and health fields, earning higher GPAs at an average of 3.35 compared to the national average of 2.94, and even graduating at higher rates. Our generation is uniquely qualified and prepared to tackle challenges that affect the health of our society and our world, taking on such challenges with a solution-oriented mentality and armed with big data. The generational gap is apparent when you consider where boomers place their emphasis: consumption over production, dogmatic deregulation instead of thoughtful oversight, permanent deficits instead of fiscal prudence, and capitalism liberated from the bounds of the state. As noted in Bruce Gibney's highly acclaimed book, A Generation of Sociopaths: How the Baby Boomers Betrayed America. Previous generations have come, yeah, there's that one. Previous generations have come and gone, each with their own wartime conflicts and societal difficulties. Since 1944, the GI Bill has presented service members and veterans a unique opportunity, one which forever altered the landscape of post-secondary education, when millions of American GIs went back to school after World War II. With the influx of veterans, more than half of students in school had served in the military, paving the way for the modernization of higher ed. We've seen similar examples of veterans leading the way in today's schools, whistleblowing predatory lenders and servicing practices, calling for innovation in the classroom, and demonstrating the value of education earned through service. According to recent studies, our generation is the first not to be motivated by money. In fact, research has shown that a majority of us would take a pay cut if it meant we had the opportunity to change the world, and many have. We care too much about what we're doing, not about what we're earning. While today's topic is focused on securing opportunity for our generation, I suspect that most millennials would care more about securing it for future generations than our own. In the work of Student Veterans of America has done with the GI Bill, we're focused on making it a permanent part of service, not for ourselves, but for future generations, our brothers and sisters who come after us. Through service, research, data, and informed decision-making, this desire to serve will persist. We thank Leader Pelosi, Chairman DeLauro, and Swalwell for your time. We look forward to answering any questions and any of the feedback that you may have.
Great.
Rachel.
Thank you, Will. Rachel.
Good afternoon, Leader Pelosi, Representatives DeLauro, Swalwell, Thompson, Sanchez, Velasquez, Soto, distinguished members of the House, staff. I thank you for this opportunity to address you today. I would not be sitting here without the love and mentorship of my parents, who have been married for 42 years, the education and training provided to me by public school teachers, the Cypress Mandela Training Center, and the Electrical Training Alliance of Alameda County. With their help, I went from pre-apprentice to journey-level electrician with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 595 in Dublin, California, Representative Swalwell's district. The IBEW is among the largest labor union in the United States and represents over 750,000 active and retired members with a wide variety of fields, including utilities, construction, telecommunications, broadcasting, manufacturing, railroads, and government. In 2015, I moved from Washington, D.C. from Oakland, California, to become an international representative in the Civic and Community Engagement Department of the IBEW. I'm responsible for the Young Workers Initiative, RENEW. RENEW stands for Reach Out, Engage, Next Gen Electrical Workers. RENEW's mission is to inspire the next generation of IBEW members to become active in their local unions by focusing on issues that are important to younger workers, providing education about the IBEW and the labor movement, and also fostering relationships within our IBEW with the membership and local union leadership. The IBEW also has a program dedicated to youth engagement in Canada, which is called Next Gen. In the past several years, the committees have grown from 9 to 114. The trade union movement has always shown a genuine desire to uplift, assist, and support the cause of young people. The founder of the IBEW, Henry Miller, was a young man in his 30s who organized linemen around the principles of improving safety, training, and wages. Miller brought people together to secure a brighter future through collective bargaining. Today, over 125 years later, the IBEW is doing the same and much more to create opportunities for young people in the electrical industry and beyond. The IBEW created Renew to make young people a priority by creating space, giving voice, and respect to issues young workers care about. The 114 Renew committees in the US and Canada have done much to show other millennials how the IBEW creates opportunity through education, employment, and advancement. Our Renew chapters and their members are active in their local unions and communities through everything from volunteering to political activism. In addition to this great work, in many areas, IBEW Renew is drawing attention to the excellent apprenticeship training program the IBEW and the National Electrical Contractors Association offer through social media, job fairs, and school visits to educate guidance counselors. IBEW is in partnership with the National Electrical Contractors Association, sponsored apprenticeships across the United States through the Electrical Training Alliance. In fact, I encourage each of you to contact your IBEW locals in your districts to arrange for a tour. I often say that our registered apprenticeship programs are the best kept secret. Unfortunately, in my opinion, our programs are underutilized. Too many people do not understand or know about the benefits of an apprenticeship program, such as those offered through the Electrical Training Alliance. While entry into the programs are competitive with an emphasis on math and science, we sponsor pre-apprenticeship programs to help with preparedness. Renew chapters are working with the leadership of their local unions to educate young workers about the opportunities and benefits of the apprenticeship programs. Through these independent funded programs, apprentices of all ages and backgrounds receive on-the-job training, earning as they learn. Apprentices also have medical benefits, employer-provided pension benefits, and a voice at work. I myself went through a 5-year labor management electrical apprenticeship program in Alameda County, California. I completed 8,000 hours of on-the-job training, 900 hours of classroom instruction. I worked on schools, I worked on hospitals, office buildings, cutting-edge laboratories that were working to cure disease. I learned skills that can never be taken away. I am now able to build my community both literally and figuratively. This is priceless, but really this is debtless. I completed this program with no student loan debt with immediate access to employment. The Labor Management Apprenticeship Partnership has served us well. With over 100 years of experience and training, 75% of apprentices who go on to journeyman status come from such programs. In addition, the labor movement apprenticeship programs, the labor management apprenticeship programs rely on community allies and partners such as Helmets to Hard Hats and VEEP. VEEP is a Veterans Electrical Entry Program. This is our Veterans Reentry Program specific to the electrical industry. Now, Helmets to Hard Hats and VEEP both connect veterans with training and career opportunities in the construction industry. It's important that our veterans seek employment after completion of active duty and are afforded transition opportunities into registered apprenticeships through programs like Helmets to Hard Hats and VEEP. While IBEW and its Renew initiative are focusing on engaging and educating young trade unionists, we need partners like yourselves to talk about the value of our training program. that it creates a pathway to the middle class with workplace rights and protections. And this is value that's extremely beneficial to today's millennials. Again, we appreciate your continued support of registered apprenticeship programs and the value that they bring to individuals, families, communities, and the American workforce. But please help us spread the word about this best-kept secret. On behalf of the IBEW, its young workers, I thank you for this opportunity to address you. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. All right, Louisa.
Good afternoon, Leader Pelosi, Congressman Swalwell, Congressman Soto, and Congresswoman Sanchez and Velasquez. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Luisa Santos. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, but in 1998, my mother decided that the opportunity of a world-class education in the United States was worth starting life over. And so we came to the United States. My mother began working as a housekeeper, and we started the process of securing permanent residency. I'm proud to say that as of last April, I am a very proud U.S. citizen, but my American dream started well before that. After quickly completing English as a second language program, I was tested into the gifted track, and I started to find refuge and pride in my academics and extracurriculars. I graduated high school and attended Miami-Dade Honors College for 2 years, where I had the chance to serve as student government president and work for Dr. Eduardo Padron, the president of that school. At Georgetown, I then transferred to Georgetown, where I majored in political economy and minored in education, inquiry, and justice. While at Georgetown, I was fortunate to benefit from Pell Grants, supplemental educational opportunity grants, federal work study, and subsidized student loans, and to receive a generous aid package from Georgetown that made it possible for me to complete my education and graduate with very little debt. I know that many of my classmates, both at Miami-Dade and at Georgetown, relied heavily on these programs along with institutional aid to make their educations possible. And I want to encourage all of you to continue fighting against the cuts that have been proposed to these programs. Without them, many would never secure a college degree and their entrepreneurial dreams would wither on the vine. In 2013, during my senior year at Georgetown, I founded Lulu's Nitrogen Ice Cream on the notion that people want and deserve the freshest ice cream possible, made with the highest quality ingredients. To that end, we have adopted a cow, Lulu, and work with local farmers. Since then, we've successfully grown three revenue streams: catering, wholesale, and a shop out of Miami, Florida. I have the honor of employing 13 incredible people. At Lulu's, we offer our team members monthly personal financial literacy classes for which they get paid as a voluntary program. I personally mentor new business owners in our community individually and through Startup FIU at Florida International University. And after noticing that one of the biggest challenges for business owners locally was the permitting and licensing process, I partnered with Support Local Florida to release a step-by-step guide on that process as a free resource to our community. And I'm excited to release that later this month. While I decided to start my business out of college, I certainly did not realize that data show that compared to our male counterparts, millennial women are less likely to be entrepreneurs. 5% of millennial men are business owners, while only 3.8% of millennial women are. Millennial women are more racially and ethnically diverse than entrepreneurial women of prior generations. For example, 22.1% of millennial women-owned firms are considered minority-owned, which is significantly higher than previous generations. And contrary to what one might assume, entrepreneurship among millennials compared with previous generations is on the decline. This could have a profound effect on the future of business as well as job creation and growth. One of the first steps that I took when I decided to start Lulu's was reach out to the Small Business Development Center at Howard University. SBDCs, as you know, are funded by Congress through the Small Business Administration. I was connected to consultants there who walked me through the steps of starting a business, and when I decided to move it to Miami, I connected with the Florida International University SBDC, and the two consultants I've been working with there are responsible for campaigns that now generate 20% of our revenue. Without that program, Lulu's very well might not have the success that we have today. As Lulu's grew, I started to look for additional capital for a second shop, and after a strenuous 7-month commercial loan application process, we were denied for insufficient historical financial data. With the help of the SBDC and advisors through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program and the Babson College Women Innovating Now Lab, I was approved for a commercial loan by a Community Development Financial Institution, CDFIs. Since CDFIs are on the chopping block for the proposed budget by the White House this year, please consider ways to elevate them and critique them at the same time. They do need to improve and provide more reasonable interest rates, but total elimination could really hurt many low and moderate income business owners who don't have access to capital by other means. So as you can see from my entrepreneurial trajectory, the support provided by these federal programs has been instrumental in my success, namely federal student aid, SBDCs, and CDFIs. And as I consider the strategic growth plan for my business and the significant contributions I hope to make to our economy, I am hopeful that with your support of these programs, we will continue to thrive. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story with you today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
All right, thank you to our panelists. We're going to have members ask questions and then some remarks from our leader. And I'm going to go in the order of when they arrived. And first will be our vice chair of our caucus, a Southern California member, Linda Sanchez.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming and for giving us a little glimpse into the issues that you work on and that you are passionate about. It's always great to see young people that are engaged, and we hear so often that young people don't want to be engaged, and I think you are the epitome of what is great about America. Each of your stories are phenomenal. I want to give a shout out to Rachel. I am an IBEW member myself. You go, girl. And when I started in the IBEW, there was a real lack of diversity in the union hall. I think I was the only woman on staff that wasn't like clerical staff, and we had no Spanish-speaking organizers on staff. Which, when I would go out to non-union work sites, the majority of the work was being done by in Southern California area non-English speakers. What are some of the ways that you are finding to engage young union members and increase the diversity within union halls? Because I personally think the apprenticeship programs that are offered are one of the best kept secrets. And to that end, we do how to prepare your kid for college seminars in my district, but we also do great careers that don't require a 4-year degree. And I always invite the union apprenticeship programs to come and talk about that. And it opens up a whole world of opportunity for kids that might not have known about them. What do you do to try to get the word out about those apprenticeship programs and to try to help diversify those union halls?
Well, thank you for that question. We try to meet young people where they are. A lot are in school. A lot are in, I would say, places that young people hang out. So through our Renew groups or chapters, groups have been able to go into high schools, first educate the high school guidance counselors about the value of apprenticeship, and then actually talk one-on-one with young people about why this is a viable career choice. Something, too, about young millennials, they are not as weighted down by the isms as past generations. So diversity is something that is part of their mantra or their personal mission. So that is not such as an issue with them. Something that I'm trying to encourage our more mature members who are more traditionalist is that as a retired member, you're going to need 2 active members to keep you going. So we need to bridge that intergenerational gap, and it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter.
My second question is for William. You, I think you really touched my heart when you talked about the fact that veterans are willing to sacrifice to provide opportunities for the next generation. And what do you think is sort of the key to trying to assist veterans in, getting into great paying careers? I know there are a number of obstacles, and I know, GI Bill was intended to try to help them get college education, but what are some of the barriers in terms of, assisting young veterans on a career path?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. I would say there's a clear lack of understanding about who this population is when they leave service. I think that's the number one thing that people need to think about. In fact, 2/3 of individuals that go to school right out of service are first-generation college students. they're not growing up with their parents telling them about Pell Grants and the FAFSA form, anything that is kind of taken for granted by a lot of others, I think. So taking that into account and also understanding that they don't have their high school guidance counselor to lean on. They're not going back to their high school with, sitting next to an 11th grader asking, how can I pursue school? So it's a completely different approach. And when they go to school, they're trying to find, what are my opportunities? A big part of what we try to do is help them understand where they want to end up, to your point about getting a great career and connecting those dots and doing the back planning on that. Helping them to make an informed decision on where they go to school so they don't end up at a predatory school that's just looking to take advantage of their GI Bill, which unfortunately we see all too often. A lot of those schools end up either closing or leaving the veteran with nothing to take advantage of. Corinthian and ITT Tech were good examples of those. So trying to help them become informed decision makers is a huge component of it. And that doesn't happen in the last 2 or 3 days as they leave service. You can't possibly expect someone to learn 20 plus years of institutional and societal knowledge in 2 or 3 days in the transition assistance program. In fact, the fact that DOD is even owning that is frankly kind of confusing, because as they see them for 2 or 3 days, it's the rest of their life we should be concerned about. And that's flips over to the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I think linking those pieces together, again, making sure that they're informed consumers is a huge piece of it.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. And then lastly, just a quick comment to Louisa. I wish I could take what you said about SBDCs and send it to every small business in my district, because we try to connect small businesses with SBDCs, which I think do a tremendous job at no cost to small business owners to try to help them really thrive and succeed. So thank you for your entrepreneurial spirit and for your kind comments about how helpful SBDC has been for you. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. And next is Nydia Velasquez, New York member.
Yes, thank you for being here with us. And I just, it's wonderful to see you move me with your words. It's not only veterans, but this young generation who really deeply care about making a difference, and that you want to do your job and even don't care about how much you get, but how can we make sure that the programs that help the older generation are there for the future generation. So, and you help us because you are proof that what we do here have an impact on the success in the different path that you choose. So, Jen, I just would like to ask you, we have a low rate of business formation, particularly startups. Have you done any study among millennials? And what will be the number one issue? I will say from my end that is student debt, but I would like to hear if you have any other take on it.
Yeah, we've done some research on this, and I think we heard a little bit about some experiences of young entrepreneurs already from Louisa. But we do hear a lot about student debt anecdotally, and we actually did some research to dig into this a little more. And when we looked at some of the numbers, we did see a correlation between student debt and the ability to start a business. We also hear issues like access to mentorship and access to capital as well.
Okay, so I have, earlier this Congress, I introduced legislation to address this very issue, supporting America's Young Entrepreneurs Act of 2017. And this bill will defer student loan debt and cancel a portion of student loan debt for small business startups. Mr. Hubbard, what would you say, or what advice you will give to millennials who are looking to start a business of their own, especially veterans?
Well, to start off with, we see education as highly complementary to entrepreneurship. The training that's received in programs in America's colleges and campuses across the United States are are really, bar none, unsurpassed across the world. So we're always looking to identify opportunities, whether it's at Syracuse University and their Institute for Veterans and Military Families and their education boot camp for veterans, or work going on out west at Stanford, or anywhere really. Tying those two pieces together and finding communities that are willing to support that, looking for individuals who have that training and can immediately hit the ground running.
Thank you. And Luisa, I am so glad to hear that the Small Business Development Centers provided you with the technical assistance that you needed in order to maybe devise a plan and match you with a financial institution. So can you tell me and tell us how important these development centers are? And we have a national network. I just would like to see that there is a better and more proactive outreach from the part of the Small Business Administration, so that all the millennials get to know that there are programs under the federal government to assist you.
Yeah, I mean, so thank you for your question. SBDCs have absolutely played a huge role in the development of Lulu's from the first time I met with someone just on how you start a business, right? Step by step. Secondly, the financial consultant who has helped us put together budgets for our business and really trained me in the beginning on how to review our profit and loss statements and our balance sheets. And thirdly, a marketing consultant who now has worked with us on the campaigns I mentioned that have increased our revenues. The way that more people can hear about the SBDCs, maybe some SEO, right? I think search engine optimization, just so that people know that that is like the first resource you should go to, right? It took me some time to find it, so it was not as easily accessible as I think it should be, right? Especially millennials, what are we doing? We're Googling.
Thank you. Yeah. Jen, just a short question. Have you done any research as to, when you talk about access to capital, what is the range of money that you come across a millennial needs in order to start up a business? Because I'm insisting to have a more attention given to smaller loans from the 25,000 to 150,000. Have you come across to any data that will help us understand the type of portfolio that we need to have under those loans that are guaranteed by the federal government?
So we unfortunately don't have data on that, but we do know that the data that we see, just there's a real diversity in terms of the kinds of businesses, the sizes, et cetera, that young people are starting.
Thank you. You back.
Thank you, Ms. Velasquez. Darren Soto, a new member from the Orlando area.
Thank you, Congressman. First, I am super glad that Leader Pelosi and Congressman Swalwell and others put together this Millennial Forum. Obviously, you all are the largest generation since the boomers. Very, very important to the current moment and to the future of the United States. Being born in '78, I guess that would make me a tweener. Married to a millennial born in '85. So I'd like to say I've seen a thing or two, even though I may be a little older. You know, and there's a few defining moments that I try to think about when I'm trying to understand some of the things that we could work on with you all. Now, many of you were young when you saw 9/11 happen and the terror and the dangers of the world. The Great Recession, where many folks saw their parents lose their homes and their jobs and realized the importance of the safety net and the importance of fiscal conservatism for your personal budget, and how government can fail people like they did in the Great Recession. The diversity is absolutely amazing. Your notions of equality are well beyond any generation before you. But we're also dealing with student loan debt many times the amount of any other generation. And I know you all hear that a lot. I want to start out with some questions on existing programs. I'm glad that Ms. Santos brought up the SBA opportunities, but first, the Principal Loan Forgiveness Program. Can I get a show of hands, even in the audience, of how many, and no non-millennials get to vote on this, how many millennials are familiar with the Principal Loan Forgiveness Program? Raise your hand. Okay, we have a few. Because one of the things that I think we can do is do better, like has been a theme already with Congresswoman Sanchez, of getting out existing programs. So if you are working for the government or the military or for certain qualified nonprofits, for 10 years, you get your whole principal wiped out. Now, the first generation of folks who will qualify will come up next year, which is why there's a big fight in the proposed budget by Trump that would try to cut that funding, especially when people have been monitoring it for 9 years. But I would hope that we get more and more people interested in this program because it's community service, government service, the type of beyond yourself service that a lot of folks want opportunities for, but also to reduce and eliminate student loans. So the question to our panel, and I'm happy to hear from all of you, is what could we be doing better on the principal loan forgiveness program, and how can we make sure that more and more millennials know the option and apply to the program?
I will say we were certainly concerned to see attempts to eliminate the program. It's a critical program for all, folks who might be teachers, social workers, first responders, et cetera. I do think that we certainly want more young people who have debt to be able to know about it. I think elevating the program and really making sure that folks are talking about it back home in districts, I think could be really, really important.
One thing to add to that is, for example, we have a doctor of research in our office who is the one who produced all our great research. He's been working on this, receiving that PSLF for years, and even just in conversations with him, I mean, it's an arduous process, but I think worthwhile. And you've got people who are so committed to service that are willing to go that extra step and take advantage of this program. And frankly, without it, he couldn't do what he does. Today, we wouldn't know what we know about student veterans and the million plus who've gone through school without someone like him. If a program were to go away like that, we'd lose on data like that.
I would just say simply more promotion. I mean, as large as billboards, as large as every school campus. And then also, too, just because I'm an advocate for apprenticeship program, give greater promotion to apprenticeship program so there is no student loan debt to begin with.
Good point. You're talking about millennials, right? I think you're asking how we can get the word out and what's most effective.
Or improve the program. Anything we could do, because this is a base program that could literally wipe out a lot of people's debt, and it is wholly underutilized. We'll know with we're at the 9th year of people who are in the program. So the first generation of folks will hit 10 years and will get their loans completely forgiven, but the program is not well populated. So I want to know what we could do to improve it and get more people into the program who may be able to qualify.
People have to enroll in the program when they start working.
You have to just certify each year with your student loan lender that your employment qualifies.
Yeah.
And if you do it every year for 10 years, you're basically locked in, and then they eliminate the whole thing.
This is going to sound so off the wall, but partner with BuzzFeed and write an article about it.
Okay.
That's how you'll reach all millennials,
Okay.
and they'll actually read it.
And this is going to my second question, which is, we have these basic government programs that have been evolved over the years to address some of the problems of future generations. When we start new programs, we are in a big fight, like we are with the ACA right now, which is great, but it's easier to adjust existing programs. So whether it be the ups and downs of working in the gig economy with income, whether it be gaps in health insurance, or whether it be saving for retirement, how could we amend or change Social Security for saving for retirement, Medicaid and ACA to help cover those gaps, and unemployment to help cover the highs and lows of people, whether it be small businesses or in the gig economy? And open to the whole panel.
This is slightly tangentially related, but with the GI Bill, in 2008, we had a huge fight to bring that about, which many folks remember. It was actually not easily passed, which people think, well, everyone supports veterans. It was a tough fight. And that's, in fact, the exact reason that we look to keep it around for future generations. Is we don't want to go through that fight again. Finally, we got it right. And so now we're trying to keep it around. Part of what we want to do with that is actually just change the name slightly and remove the wartime specific title to the GI Bill. therefore keeping it around. I mean, imagine if today and the tight budget times that we have, that we'd be faced with the Korean War GI Bill. I mean, that would be gone in a second. So just some slight tweaks like that, maybe on some of the nomenclature, might make it a little bit more difficult to cut across the board.
Anybody else want to comment on adjusting
Yeah.
some of these basic programs to address these 21st century needs?
I did want to highlight just the importance of access to individual health insurance. So we saw over the last decade that access to health insurance through employment for young people dropped much more sharply than for older folks. So when the ACA came about, the ability to go on an exchange and get a tax credit, or the ability to enroll in Medicaid, particularly for childless young people, was a huge change. And so I think that's something that's been a really big deal for a lot of young people. I would say in terms of retirement, I think there's a lot of conversations about increasing access to portable benefits that I think are going to be an increasingly important conversation over the next few years, as we've seen a lot of changes in those types of benefits on the employer side.
I was going to say that unions are already doing this, so we're looking for other people to catch up.
And from a small business perspective, how do you think we could adjust these programs for our millennial small business men and women?
There are companies right now like Stride Health that are providing individual-based healthcare and other benefits. And so learning maybe from those models, I know they've had huge growth and have increased health and performance for companies like Uber already tremendously. So learning that model maybe.
And just one last question, if that's okay. If each of you could give us one suggestion on how we can improve the future of our economy, it'd be great to hear from you.
More investment in pre-apprenticeship programs that lead to apprenticeship, building trade investments, which leads to infrastructure building, careers that are viable now and into the future that revolve around math and science.
I would say for our side of things, the number one way to do that would be to empower women veterans.
I would say really bold investments in higher education in ways that really address some of the serious access issues and also serious completion challenges.
Ensure access to capital for young people who don't have as much historic data.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to see all of you. As I sit up here and look at you and look at our friends in the crowd there, I feel as if I'm looking into the future. It belongs to you. Thank you for being here so that we can hear from you. We are listening. I want to thank Congressman Eric Swalwell, co-chair of the Steering and Policy Committee and also leader of our Future Forum, for going around the country, as some of you may be aware, listening, bringing our 30-somethings members to how many, 50 cities by now? 41. He'll get 50 pretty soon. 41 cities throughout that's a lot of territory and a lot of listening and a lot of learning. So thank you, Eric, for your leadership in that regard. It's been very acclaimed. So if you hear that Future Forum is coming, tell a friend. Congresswoman DeLauro has been on the forefront of so many of the issues that we talk here about, and her leadership role on the top Democrat on the Ed and Labor Committee, Health and Education and Labor. So whether it's health, education, labor issues, how they affect our veterans and the rest. She has so much knowledge on the subject. That's why she wants to learn more and be current on it. And my colleagues here, you know, Congresswoman Velasquez really did the SBDC. That was her one of her initiatives. So she was delighted when you brought that up and were able to pursue that conversation. Linda Sanchez, you heard her story of being an electrical worker. So the people who are here have a deep interest in what you have to say, as you can tell by Congressman Soto's questions. I was with him at Valencia University, but I had spoken at the Miami-Dade graduation a few years ago and know what a dynamic place. Both of them have a lot in common in terms of the beautiful diversity of the schools and the first generation of many people to graduate. So we're a Hoya Georgetown family, so I'm glad it took you to that. All of you made magnificent testimony. While I couldn't hear all of it in the beginning, I did read, and I am very impressed by your decisions and priorities you have here. So I want to just say to Jen, Jen was so much a part in the Young Invincibles were so much a part of our passing the Affordable Care Act, and your testimony speaks to that. We learned so much from you, and the witnesses you presented were eloquent in making the case. Issues that related to, well, I'm invincible, so I'm not going to be sick, and then I get in a skateboard accident, or I get more serious than that, a diagnosis. So many parts of the bill that talked about staying on your parents' policy until you're 26 years old, issues that relate to pre-existing conditions, all of those kinds of issues that relate to women's health. Many of the a sharpening of those issues came about because of the involvement of the Invincibles. I just wanted to ask you, Jen, the research and policy of, you had one of your work says the research and policy in the future of work and where young adults work, published by Young Invincibles, shows how hard the recession was on young adults. Can you highlight some of the takeaways from these findings?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we looked at the Great Recession and the impact on young people. And, despite the fact that we have seen some of these employment rates increase in the last couple of years, we know, for example, that prolonged periods of unemployment can have an impact on wages for decades after a recession. And we also know that a lot of the changes, for example, at the state level in state higher education budgets have not come back. So we have 48 states that are still investing less in their higher education budgets than before the recession. So we're still seeing a lot of the impact of what happened in the recession, and it's still impacting this generation.
Thank you. Very helpful. I want to go to Lisa now because she talked about the decreasing rate of growth of entrepreneurs among the millennials. And we have seen this coming since the recession, and wonder what you think the impact of student loans might have on depressing the, shall we say, the opportunity they might be there for entrepreneurship, as well as the, again, access to credit that you talked about as well. This is something that is not only important to millennials, it is important to our economy. That we have much more interest. Now, starting a small business has to be the most courageous thing that anybody could do. I don't know anything that takes more optimism, maybe getting married, but but I think maybe that you have a better chance. You have some knowledge of what the prospects are, but the excitement and the rest. And so we really have to stimulate that. Maybe you talked earlier, Costa. When we have meetings with our small business community in San Francisco, they said, we want capital, access to capital, we want a trained workforce, and we want customers. And again, they have an idea. You have an idea, which you beautifully, ice cream, I love it. In fact, I have it all over my jacket right now. But can you tell us, if it isn't so much from the impact of the anvil of student loans that people are carrying around, if it's that, what else it might be as well?
So to reiterate that point, if I had graduated with the average $30,000 of debt, there's absolutely no way I could have started Lulu's because payments start 6 months right after, and I wouldn't have been able to. I do have a very small amount of student loans, and I am able to make those payments, and so that was not something that weighed heavily on me because, as many people who have started businesses know, you usually don't take a salary for a while, right? And so it is not something you can pursue if you have debt like that. Additionally, I received a lot of training, right? So there were entrepreneurship programs that I was able to participate in, including at Georgetown, the wonderful entrepreneurship program there, and also afterwards accelerators and incubators like the Women Innovating Now program out of Babson College and the 10,000 Small Businesses program with Goldman Sachs that is out of community colleges like Valencia and Miami-Dade. And so those programs really gave me the training I needed to be able to act on this risk I took of starting my own business and succeed at it, right? And so, but definitely student loan is something that can be prohibitive for a lot of people. And so now I've created 13 jobs, right? So it makes more sense to the economy that I'm able to pursue this so I can continue to create economic growth. And so maybe we can add that to the principal loan forgiveness program.
Well, and true, because small businesses are the job creators, are the capital formers. So it's important for you to succeed, but it's important for our economy that everyone try.
Right.
And I congratulate you on your success. Will, I was curious to hear you talk about the GI Bill. That was a great accomplishment of the House Democrats. I say that without any hesitation. We worked in a bipartisan way, but the GI Bill for the 21st century was one that has produced such results for us, seeing that not only for the GIs, the vets, but for the other students in school. When I go to campuses and the rest, I always want to see the veterans, and the impact that they're having on the other students is so positive, and the faculty is so receptive to integrating that thinking and patriotism into the community of those schools. One of the reasons that the challenges we had when we introduced it was that people said it's going to hurt re-upping. So if people have an out, then they won't, And so we made the bill, in order to get around that, but still give the vet all the option, we said the vet or a family member. And that's how we've got the bill passed, because some very important names in our country and respected were opposing us because it was going to hurt re-upping. We then passed another bill because, in addition to it, because if you say you're a vet, you're not a vet, you're in the military and you die in combat, we wanted the family member to have that benefit too. Because you've given your life for your country doesn't mean you should lose a benefit for your family. And that was another enhancement. But the first challenge that we had, it was a fight, as you said, but we were very proud of it. My question to you is, what do you think the top reasons why millennials coming out of the military struggle to take full advantage of this economic and education? It's the same question: outreach, knowledge of what the possibilities are. From your experience, what would you say?
The key challenge is 2/3 of these individuals are first-generation college students. They don't have families who bring them up with that expectation to go to school. And there's literally no shortage of organizations out there who work directly with veterans and bring them through our country's top schools. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Princeton, the list goes on.
Georgetown.
George, of course. George Washington. We could go on for days. Ultimately, though, the thing that I hear most frequently from those who do make that leap to top tier schools, higher ed in general, is I didn't know I could do this, and no one told me this was something that I would have an opportunity to do. So kind of bridging that divide and making sure that they know it's an opportunity. Half of the folks already are realizing that. It's that other half that we want to bring along and helping them, empower them, as I said earlier, and realize that they can be successful. And by the data, are being substantially more successful than their peers even.
Well, the vets were a large part of putting this together. We fought for you, now send us to school.
Yep.
And in terms of parents and their encouragement, the more they know about this benefit being there before their kids go into the service, the more encouragement they will. We find sometimes parents don't even want to bring up the subject for the embarrassment that I'm not going to be able to assist you in going to school. But now that opportunity is there, it leads to more awareness and the rest. But if you see any other ways that we can, we're pleased. I mean, it's a success. We want it to be a total success. Rachel, it's exciting to hear about your apprenticeship experience and the rest. Ed Hill was my best friend and is still. Your new leadership is wonderful too. And as Congresswoman said, she's always reminding us that she was an IBEW person. The Secretary of Labor said this week that good, successful programs for job training and apprenticeships are not contingent upon robust federal investments. Can you talk about cuts in funding to any job training program or assistance to job seekers might be harmful to, or even people with jobs to go on to other jobs like electrician are critical to closing the gap?
Yeah, those cuts are very painful because if we want to be prepared for a 21st century workforce, we have to have the skills to do those jobs, and we need the dollars and the investment. And I especially talk about pre-apprenticeship program because it shores up the pipeline to apprenticeship, but we also need to dig a little bit deeper in STEM investment. Because again, with that core principle of math and science, our young people can write their own ticket. A lot of those career paths come with no student loan debt. In fact, I feel like our math and science sectors are crying out for our young people. So again, investment is going to be key, but strategic investment.
Any of you want to weigh in on any of the other questions, Will?
Actually, I'd just like to echo that point about STEM. We've been working closely with some members in the House on actually expanding the GI Bill specifically for the purpose of achieving a STEM degree, which often take 5 years versus the 4. And that's been a huge hurdle. We've heard that for several years from student vets that did highly technical jobs, nuclear, all sorts of stuff when they were in the service. And they want to continue that, but they simply do the math. They've got a family. They realize they just don't have the opportunity to take out a loan, and they choose a different career path. And we know STEM degrees are a higher return on investment for not only the veteran themselves, but for the American population. The country needs these guys and girls in school and in these career fields. So the more we can do to encourage that, we think all the better.
Any other comments on that? But since we're talking about STEM, one of the challenges that we know that our workforce face, and you may have talked about this, I don't think so, because I had a pretty good idea what was going on here, is of course what's happening with innovation and robots and et cetera. And some of us live in a place where the gig economy is more significant than other places. We have to recognize that it is a specific thing, but as an economy, we have to think in bigger ways. The current employment-tied benefit system rests on a three-legged stool of contributions from government, workers, and employers. Of course, the gig economy in some ways wipes that out, the day worker economy. When it comes to funding for the 21st century social safety net, do government, individuals, employees all have a role to play? How do you see that? Because in some of the, shall we say, proposals, I won't even call them advances that are there, you won't even be, your employer won't even be paying your Social Security or anything else. You'll be paying it all yourself. And I just wondered what you all had. See, I don't consider the safety net a safety net for individuals. It's a safety net for the system. If the jobs are, everything is on the upswing, that's a good thing, of course. If in a normal cycle of things go down and workers need some assistance, that's to help the private sector too, so that they can have the flexibility to deal with swings. And of course, if we get into a recession, that's a different story, but the normal course of events. So in order for the entrepreneurial spirit to thrive in bigger businesses and the rest, they have to take chances, and again, there's cycles, and again, there's a need for a safety net. But I don't like to think of it as just for an individual, but for the whole system. So what do you think about employer-tied benefits relating to government, the work himself, and employers? All of you.
Well, at Lulu's, we obviously pay our portion of the taxes as an employer. And we are happy to do that, right? We see the value of that, and we do think that government, employer, and employees should all have a part in that.
Rachel, what do you think?
I'm very proud to be a part of a union that provides those type of benefits and believes that all workers should have those type of benefits. So I feel that we are leading a cause that I hope people will follow.
Thank you, Rachel. Will, what do you think?
One quick thing to think about is the Service Member Civil Relief Act, which provides, I think, a model for all Americans. These are rights that are provided to veterans that frankly should be rights for everybody. Just because a veteran is deploying, they're given opportunities to ensure that they can maintain a financially viable situation at home. I mean, I don't know why that's not something we think about for all Americans.
Thank you, Will. Great.
I mean, I think we certainly need to be thinking about the role for government, for employers, and for employees, and it is certainly a system. And young people saw those gaps in the system during the Great Recession when they saw their families really struggling. So I think as we're thinking about how the economy is changing, making sure we're building a system that really works for this generation. And I think even as we're thinking about innovation in the economy, thinking about how young people can start to think about what skills they need, where they should be investing their education. So one thing that we were excited to see was the College Transparency Act, which actually provides more information to people who are trying to make decisions about where to go to school and what to study, so that they can try and understand what skills they need for the next generation.
And then back to STEM, or we say STEAM in California with the A, the arts, very much a part of what's happening in the future of our economy. Mr. Swalwell wants to make an announcement here.
That breaking, #breaking.
Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. University of Michigan to offer free in-state tuition to any student whose family has an income under $65,000. And
Isn't that great? Well, I thank you all. I join Eric, and he'll close, but join, I'm calling them by their first names, Congressman Soto and Congressman Swalwell. And who else was here was Mike Thompson, who was a veteran and who helped us write the GI Bill for the 21st century, and Congresswoman Lawrence, who was here as well. They had other responsibilities that they had to deal with. This is a working farm, all stuff is going on at the same time as we're enjoying the benefit of your thinking and your wisdom. Thank you all for what you do and for being with us today. We're listening. Don't hesitate to call. And if you see something you don't like, speak up. But in advance of that, help us shape what we do for the future. It belongs to you.
thank you, Leader Pelosi, for convening us here today for this important issue. And one other issue that I know many of you have talked to me about on the panel and who are here today is what the cost of our challenges are for our parents. Because if it affects you, chances are it's affecting your parents. And Will, you touched me when you talked about the challenges that people have in their family who have never gone to college before. And as someone who was the first in my family to go to college, I saw firsthand the challenges of just understanding what it's going to cost. And you're doing everything you can to afford to rent in a community where you can go to a good high school just to go to college that you're not really able to finance to be able to pay for college. And so you're taking out public loans and private loans, and then you know that stays with you beyond the degree. So there's a cost there. But in the spirit of what the leader said, we hear you. I want to talk about something very briefly that Mr. Soto alluded to, the public loan forgiveness program. And that's something that Leader Pelosi, working with President Bush, it was a bipartisan idea back in 2007, said that if you pay off over 10 years, 120 payments, while working in public service as a teacher, a firefighter, a police officer at a nonprofit, you can have the balance of the principal forgiven. And that sounds like a program we need to tell more people about. It's on the chopping block under President Trump's budget. But we heard on a Future Forum visit in Boulder, Colorado, from a 23-year-old recent graduate that she had gone into nonprofit work. It was what she wanted to do. She felt like it was her calling. But she was afraid that because as her student loan repayments went up and up and up, that she was going to have to leave after a couple years, and she could not forecast being able to stay in and continue that work. And I remember her asking our Future Forum member, she said, but shouldn't I get some credit or some relief for the work I've already done? Because 10 years, she just can't wait. And we looked at each other and we thought, yeah, you should. And so we put together legislation, and Senator Blumenthal has the bill on the Senate side that actually, starting at year 2, it gives you relief as you go. So you get 10% of the principal relieved 2 years into your service, and then another 10%, and it keeps stepping up and up and up so that we can recruit and retain young people. But the point of that story is we didn't know that that challenge was out there, that people were thinking about it in that way. And because we heard from a young person, we made a proposal to change the law. And I hope that encourages you to share with us your challenges and ideas as to how we do that. So thank you. We hear you, and now we will go to work for you.